Mick Lynch, why are we here?
Well, we're here because the anti-union bills, the latest one, which is trying to ban strikes effectively, is going through its second reading tonight. So we've called this quick rally on Thursday and Friday to get a turnout tonight to oppose that. We've got to show this Tory government that the union movement is ready to fight, that working people are ready to fight. So we're very pleased that people have turned out tonight at short notice on a cold night to show that this fight isn't over and we're going to carry on, and that the reasons for the strikes are still there. The strikes will carry on and we'll campaign to defeat this legislation.
How would you describe the legislation?
Well, it's an attack on civil rights, it's an attack on human rights, it's an attack on democracy. You can't have a free society unless you've got free unions. And they've lost the argument. They've spent the summer condemning unions, they've spent the summer condemning striking workers, trying to convince everyone that we need to be skint, that we all need to be poorer than we used to be, and they've lost that argument. So rather than try and win that argument, they've just changed the rules of the game. They're trying to ban those strikes, and they're trying to stop more workers coming into the fight. So it's repression, and we've got to fight that.
There's a lot of talk from the government about minimum service levels, but the problem seems to be there's no minimum service level right now.
Well, there are no minimum service levels in the NHS. We've seen what's going on with waiting lists. We've seen what's going on with clogged up A&E. We've seen the state of the railways when there are no strikes. Well before the strike phase started, there were massive problems on the railway. And it's ironic, if it wasn't so sad, that you don't get a minimum service level guarantee from the government on any public service. You certainly don't get a maximum price guarantee. But when people start fighting back about what's going on, and a lot of this is about the funding of these services as well. If you don't fund the service properly, you will get people leaving it. We've got a wage crisis and a service crisis. So it is ironic that the only thing that they're not guaranteeing is the service that we should all expect from our public services. So that's another scandal.
How would you describe the relationship, the government's relationship with the strike movement?
Well, the government is obviously completely hostile. What they thought at the start of the summer when we had our ballot, which was the first major one, is that we'd be defeated very quickly, that we'd quickly disappear, that the public would hate us. And Grant Shapps, if you might remember, was pumping all that up at the time. Bellicose statements, aggression. It hasn't worked, it's backfired. There are more people supporting the strikes than ever now, including our own. And so that's why they're bringing in these laws. They'd more or less forgotten about them at one stage, and they've resurrected them, like they're trying to resurrect Boris Johnson in some of them. So they're resurrecting these old repressive laws. We've had all these laws in the past where unions get fined, unions get sued, workers get sacked. So we're either going to take this country forward with progressive politics, or it's going to go back to the 1920s and beyond with regressive politics, and that's what we've got at the minute from this Tory government.
There's a lot of comparison with Europe in terms of Europe has minimum service levels, but Europe also has a greater level of collective bargaining between employers and employees.
Yeah, well, it's a completely different system in Europe. In France, for instance, which everyone quotes, it's the union that tells the companies. So if you take the railway, for instance, the union writes to the company and says, we'll be taking 50% of our people out on strike, or we'll be taking 20%. Or we're taking all of them out on strike. So it's the union that decides the minimum service, and they give that in their strike notices, and then they make the arrangements from there. And nobody has ever taken enforcement action in France on the minimum service level. So it's a bit of a nonsense. Whereas Grant Shapps can't wait to get people in court. He can't wait to sack workers who may not want to break their own strikes. And what we're talking about here is conscription. They will name people. And in fact, the Secretary of State himself can name people in certain circumstances. And that's an outrage. You've got to tell people they've got to go to work when there's a strike on, and we can't accept that. That's conscription. And so we're going to have to fight it.
Rishi Sunak says he supports strikes. Do you believe him?
Rishi Sunak?
Yeah.
Well, he says he supports the right to strike, but what he really means, he supports the right to strike as long as it's not effective and as long as the workers can't win. So what he's doing in the railway strike at the moment is subsidising the strikes. He's paying for them directly. Over 320 million quid he spent on these strikes, which could have resolved the dispute. So instead of actually going to the negotiating table, he is taking away the right to strike. He doesn't support anyone. He doesn't know about striking. He doesn't know about working class people's lives. He doesn't even know what a GP is. So he's completely irrelevant to most people. And it's the typical stuff that we've got a toff running the country and working people are having to pay the price.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Eh?
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
You have to say that again.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I want to do my speech and get in the warm after.
Looking forward to it. Thank you very much for your time.
Cheers. Cheers.